It's always so funny starting this every week. It's like one of my favorite times that we do this. Hey, Kevin Gilland, welcome back to FaceTime Live, Innovation360. You just got me this week. So we'll have somebody with us in 2 weeks. I want to talk about a couple of things, tying in a few of the conversations we've had over the past 2 visits with Pam and then Todd Whitthorne. Who I know are talking with some of you folks, but then also comments. He's fantastic. Everything he talked about with health and nutrition so applies to mental health as well. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today was some work by Dave Brailsford, and we'll put a link somewhere down there on Facebook so that you have a link to one of the YouTube videos of Dave Brailsford. And Dave Brailsford is the head of British Cycling. If you don't know anything about cycling, about 15 years ago he was hired, and they basically went from being their cycling was basically bad paper boys. They didn't win anything or do anything. Well, in the past 5 years, they've won 16 gold medals and 4 out of 5 Tour de France races, which is just unbelievable. Well, Dave has talked a lot about how he achieved that kind of success over the past 15 years. And what he talks about is marginal gains. And Todd and I had this discussion after our last Facebook Live. And I love how those principles in different areas have such an application to things like nutrition, exercise, depression, alcohol. And so I want you to look at the YouTube video for Dave Brailsford, because what he meant by marginal gains, when he started with British Cycling, he looked at every single facet of bike racing, from nutrition to the bikes to travel, everything. And what his goal was, if I can improve every area by 1%, then those 1% are going to add up and we're going to achieve some incredible things. And what's really interesting is, as he talks about it, he said, when I started, if you would have said to people, hey, we're going to win the Tour de France, it's just such a lofty goal, you just can't even wrap your head around it. And for a lot of our personal struggles, whether it's mood or anxiety or nutrition, some of our goals are so big that they seem out of reach. But if you look at a lot of those things and go, okay, can I improve these different areas 1%? Most of us would say, yeah, we could. And he talked about, one example he talks about was in the Tour, it's a 21-day bike race in France, if you don't know it. But that's a long time, and they ride a really long way. Well, one of the reasons some of them don't win is it's easy to pick up a cold. Like me, I don't normally sound like this. And so what they started doing was they started teaching riders how to wash their hands. They don't have riders shake hands while they're in the race. During the race for those 21 days, they don't shake hands because that's how you get germs. And then every day they have a group that goes, because they stay in different hotels all over France. Every day they have a group that goes to the riders' hotels and sanitizes the entire hotel room. They sanitize every light switch, doorknob, every TV remote, all of those things. Because if you can reduce the likelihood of having a cold by 1%, you've just made a marginal gain. And all of those things add together to end up with the past 5 years. So, why do I talk about that when it comes to Facebook Live for Innovation360? Because we deal with a lot of struggles that people have, whether it's depression, anxiety, drugs or alcohol, marital problems, and sometimes that hill seems so big. 2 things. 1, it seems so big that we can't do anything about it, or 2, we put all of our hopes into very limited areas. And that's some of what I want to talk about today. So if Kelsey can follow me with this, and I'll talk about that real quick. Now, the first disclaimer is, if you haven't seen me write yet, it's terrible. Those of you that have either been in class or seen me write, I don't write well. So let's let go of that. But first, if you think about medications, right? And if my mom's watching, don't tell me I need to write more legibly. So, 1, medications. Can medications help when we have depression or anxiety? Absolutely. We should expect them to help a little, but we should only expect them to help about 1%. For most people, they have a small effect, right? And two, therapy. Big fan of therapy. I went to grad school for a long time. I'm still a big fan of it. But it can only do so much, right? Therapy should do something, but it can only do so much. What about our health in a physical way, right? Our physical health, which is kind of what Todd talked about. That's nutrition, exercise, sleep. We should expect, if we have, and I don't care what you put up here, I don't care if you put depression, anxiety, alcohol, I don't care what your struggle is. If you think medications and therapy are going to resolve our issues, I promise you they won't. They just won't. They should help us, but we also have to look to other places like health, sleep. Sleep is one of the biggest areas we see with the folks that we work with, that if you're sleep deprived, there's no medicine in the world that can help. And so sleep and nutrition is hugely, hugely important. One of the others is physical activity. If we're struggling with any of these things, we tend to do this less. And this should do something for us. Right? It should do something. We should expect it to do something. Now, are you saying physical activity treats depression? No. I'm also not saying if you get better sleep and eat healthy and nutrition, you won't have anxiety. But what I'm saying is the gains in those areas will add together with the gains in these areas. And what do you have in terms of relationships? I mean really good relationships, meaningful relationships. This journalist that I've interviewed with a couple times wrote this wonderful little piece about the right kind of friends. You don't want people that tell you how to live. You don't want people that's like, oh, you can do it, because we disregard both of them. But we want the kind of people in the middle that know us and we know them. Right? Those really meaningful relationships. And should that help us? Yeah, that should help. 6 is spiritual. Your spirituality ought to have some impact in your life with whatever your struggles are. We should expect that. We should be able to look at all these areas in our life and go, hey, if I'm struggling with my anxiety, or I lost my job, or my drinking is escalated where my marriage is challenged or difficult or in bad shape, how do I get that better? Okay, well, a lot of people are like, well, you got to go to AA. If you don't go to AA, you're not going to get better. And I don't know any other way to say this than that's wrong. It's just wrong. Now, I love AA, but don't expect it to do more than it should. There are a lot of other pieces that we've got to look at to make marginal gains in our lives. And so I wanted to touch on that. This is very much how we work at I360. It's also how when I love Todd Whitthorne's Don't Boil the Ocean. I love that. Because that's what we tend to do. We tend to grab one and expect it to do more than it can. So today's quick message is watch, we'll get the video on Dave Brailsford. We'll get that link for you. But start to think about your struggles and where you can make marginal gains in several different areas. We should expect these things to do something for us. We don't. Don't expect these two things to do more than they can. Okay? So that's today's takeaway, that I do think it helps us to look at our struggles differently and look to make marginal gains across several different key areas. So appreciate you being here. We'll see you in 2 weeks. I'll have I don't know who it's going to be, but you don't want to miss it. Take care.